On this episode, we are going to discuss the DiSC assessment and how financial advisors can use it effectively in their business.
This is the Resilient Advisor Podcast, the show for high-performing financial advisors. We bring you the best practices of the industry's top performers so that you can build resilience in your business and your personal life.
Thanks for downloading this episode of the Resilient Advisor Podcast. My name is Jay Coulter. Joining me on this episode is Nicole Jansen. Nicole is a business coach and a certified human behavior specialist who has worked with thousands of professionals, including financial advisors, over her 27-year career. She is the host of the Leaders of Transformation podcast that has received over downloads in over 100 countries across her 140 episodes. She is an expert on the DiSC assessment and how financial advisors can utilize it in their business. Nicole, thanks for coming on.
Oh, it's an honor, Jay. Thanks for having me.
All right, so when I was in graduate school at Emory, they had us take all the assessments that were out there, including the DiSC. And what I found is a lot of them were great content at the time, and then over time they lost their utility because there wasn't a great application for it. But in our industry, a lot of coaches like to use the DiSC assessment. Let's start at a high level. What is the DiSC assessment?
Well, first of all, I feel sorry for you. If you had to do all those assessments after a while, you must be asking the question or answering the questions and going, I don't know who I am right anymore. But that's a lot of introspection to do all those assessment tools. But DiSC is a very powerful personality assessment tool. It breaks down all of human behavior into 4 primary personality types. And then, of course, everyone is a unique blend of all 4 of those personality types. So it's not about stereotyping or pigeonholing people, but it is about understanding people better. And as you work with clients, as we all work with our clients, don't we want to have a better understanding of where they're coming from, what they need from us, because it gives us the ability to be a better advisor for them, a trusted advisor, right? What advisor doesn't want to be a trusted advisor, the person that their clients go to when they have questions? And so in order to do that, you really got to get into who they are, what are their behavior preferences, their communication style, what causes them to make decisions, and what motivates them.
So let's go a little bit deeper. What are the 4 personality types?
Sure. So the first one in the DiSC is the D. So if you imagine, for those of you listening, hopefully not when you're driving, but if you're sitting somewhere and listening, you can visualize like a circle or write a circle on a piece of paper. And by the way, one of the things that I love about DiSC, and I'm familiar with a lot of the different assessments out there, is what you talked about is application. And, a tool in it of itself has no use except for the application that, it's used in. So what I love about DiSC is that it's easy to understand, easy to remember, and easy to apply. And so when you picture it, so it's simplified by, if you look at a circle and you look at the top half of the circle, you can write there or imagine it says they're outgoing. Okay, so we've got outgoing. On the bottom half of the circle, there is you can write the word there, reserved. So you've got outgoing and reserved. So the beautiful thing about this tool is you can ask yourself 2 simple questions when you meet somebody for the first time, or you're talking to them on the phone, or you're preparing to meet them, and maybe you're going on Google and searching who they are and getting to know them. You can ask yourself 2 questions, and from those 2 questions, get a better understanding of their personality style, and therefore how you can tailor your communication. So the first question is, are they more outgoing or more reserved? Number 2 question is, are they more task-oriented or more people-oriented? And the task is, if you think of the left side of the circle, the people is on the right side. So what you end up with 4 quadrants. So D, I, S, and C. Top half on the left, you've got the outgoing and task-oriented person who is dominant. Imagine they're task-oriented and they're outgoing, right? They're driver, they're doer, decisive person. And They love to lead and be in charge. They're dominant. And then you have on the right side, on the top of the outgoing, you've got the outgoing people, and that is your inspiring type. So they love to have fun. They love recognition. They love to be interesting and interested in people. They're very involved in people, very much more social. They're outgoing and they're people oriented. On the bottom half, you have on the right side, you've got the supportive type. That person is the people-oriented person, but they're more reserved. So rather than talk, like the I would love to, they love to talk, they're outgoing and social. The supportive type is more of a listener, very good listener. They like harmony and peace and teamwork. And then you've got the bottom, which is the bottom left, is the cautious. And a lot of advisors have the cautious personality type, some of it. Maybe their most predominant. It might be a secondary trait, but it's actually where some of the smartest people come from, because they are reserved and task-oriented. They're very methodical. They like process and procedure. And this is where our engineers, our doctors, our lawyers, our advisors, a lot of them have that personality trait is very strong in them. And of course, they'll have a blend of some other ones as well. And as I said, everybody's a unique blend. So you have the dominant, the inspiring, the supportive, and the cautious.
Let's put this into application, first at a client level, and then really with support staff and how you could use this assessment to evaluate your team. So how would an advisor use this in communication with a particular type of client?
Great question. So if you first, I was talking about those two questions. You asked, are they more outgoing or more reserved? You can look at their body language. You can even their verbal tone when they meet you. You walk in, you're meeting them, and are they more advancing to you? Or are they more holding back? That could be an indication of them being just, the reserved person is a little bit more holding back, and they want to get to know you first before they warm up to you. So that's the first thing. The second thing is task and people. You can look at their environment and see, are they more task oriented? They're going to be very organized. Their desk is going to be functional. They're literally their wardrobe, the clothes they wear is going to be very functional, very organized. If you imagine somebody that's got a lot of color, that's going to be more the people-oriented person, or very more comforting clothes, that's going to be more the supportive type. So you can look at their body language and get a sense of where they're coming from. Now, once you do, and you go, oh, this person I can see that they're like, okay, let's get to the point. Tell me what you got. That's the dominant personality coming out. Well, first of all, if you look at the dominant personality type, what is their primary motivating factor? It is results. So when you're speaking to a client or a prospect, you got to talk results. What are they going to get out of it? And you also want to be specific. You want to, if you're making notes, this is where you can, I can give you some descriptive words for each of these and tips. Is the dominant personality, they want to know what. If they are interested, they're going to challenge you. And if they, when you're communicating to them, they want you to be direct, because they will decide quickly. That's the dominant personality type. So you can tailor your communication to them, all right? When you're working with somebody who's inspiring, they like recognition. That's their primary motivating factor. They want to know who's doing this, who's working with you, who else have you worked with, what kind of results have you gotten for them? If they're interested, they will tell you how they feel. It was interesting. I went into a major company in Canada, and actually she said, well, for training, I was going to offer my training to them, and big insurance company and financial services. And she said, oh, you know what, we're good, thanks very much. But if you want to send us some information, we'll take a look at it. And I said, well, no problem. I said, tell you what, I'm going to be in the area, which I wasn't, but I made a point to be in the area. And I said, let me just drop it off. I'll put a face to the name. And she goes, okay. So I walk in, receptionist goes, it's okay, let me grab her, and you can just say hello. And so anyway, she comes out, warm, friendly, I personality type, the inspiring type, and also dominant, because she wanted to get results, but she wanted to have fun while she was doing it. Anyway, so she's like, hey, come on in, come into the office. And so anyway, so I walk into the office, there's lots of pictures of family and all this stuff going on. And she starts talking, literally had an hour and a half conversation. And by the end, she was like, how do we get you in here? And why is that? Number one, because I put a face to the name. And in her case, that made an impact, which it does in many cases. And number two is I let her talk. She shared about her family. She shared about what she was up to and some of the things that she's achieved and all of this. And as a result of that, and I tailored my communication to who she was and what's important to her, is that we were able to, to create a deal out of that. So it's worth it. So that's inspiring type. They want to know who. If they're interested, they will tell you how they feel. They want you to be excited because they will decide emotionally. Now, when you're working with a husband and wife, obviously you got to keep in mind that you're looking at two different personality types and then the blend of how they work together. So it's got to keep that in mind. But the third, so you don't want to just go all into one, but you want to see, you want to gauge and say, okay, I'm going to test the waters here, make sure I'm covering off, the results that we can get for a client. How can we incorporate letting them know that there are other people that we've worked with, some of the results that we've been able to get with them and success we've been able to get with them. The third personality type is a supportive, and they are motivated by appreciation, and they want harmony, they want teamwork. So they want to know how. How is this going to happen? And if they're interested, they will take their time. If they, in the way that you communicate to them, they want you to be sincere. Right? Sincere and kind. They're some of the kindest people you'll ever meet, or the people that are supportive types. They're good listeners, as I said, more reserved, and they care about people a lot, and they will decide slowly. So the dominant personality type decides quickly. The supportive type decides slowly. So it's understanding where your client's coming from and what they need from you. And what's interesting is the fourth personality type is the cautious type. They want quality answers, and they want to know the process, and they want to know why, right? And if they're interested, they will ask you questions. They want you to be credible, okay? That's where the quality answers come in. You can't BS them. They want to know because they've probably already done their own research. So they probably know a lot about it. They're the ones that will, read the consumer reports before they buy a car, all that kind of stuff. And they will decide carefully. What's interesting about this is that some of the, I'm sure most of the people listening have heard somebody say to them, let me think about it. Well, the interesting thing is the cautious type is really the only one that's really needs to think about it, right? Mm-hmm. The D's, if they're interested, they're going to tell you right then and there. If they're not interested, they're also going to tell you. They're not going to waste their time. The inspiring type, if they're not sure, if they're hesitant, they may say, let me think about it. But what it really means is I don't want to tell you no, because then you're not going to like me. And they like to be liked. The supportive type may say, let me think about it, not because they're going to decide slowly, but because they are afraid of offending you. They want to support you. They like you, similar to the I, but they don't know how to say no. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's understanding. Once you understand, it's like, oh my gosh, this is like solving a people puzzle, and really understanding, again, not categorizing, but understanding and saying, wow, this is what my client needs. I had a financial advisor many years ago who went through a presentation with me, and I'm a D personality type largely, and I said to him, look, I don't need to know all of the nitty gritty. I mean, he was like literally reading the contract and everything. I'm like, look, I'm gonna read that later. Just tell me, like, okay, how do we get from where I am right now to where I want to be? Can you help me do it? And how do we do it? Give me the executive summary. Anyway, 3 hours later, I was like, oh my gosh, right? I ended up making him my client because, I said to him, look, I think you're amazing at what you do, but I think you're losing people because you had me in and out. You sold me and you sold me out, and you sold me in, you sold me out. I'm still here because I like you and you're a nice person and I understand the personalities. But you know what? Most people won't take that kind of time. That's why with business plans, there is an executive summary. Why? Because most leaders, that driven personality type, they want the short, sweet, give me the overview, and then I will decide if I'm interested enough to read the rest. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. This seems to be a fantastic model for self-reflection and knowing your own strengths, as well as if you can make the assessment on the fly, how to communicate with your clients and prospects. Let's shift for a second here and take it to the team. How can an advisor, when they're adding support staff, use the DiSC assessment to help build the optimal practice?
Great question. Well, first of all, there are personality assessments. You don't have to guess with all of this, right? There are personality assessments. I have them actually available on my website. I work with a company called Personality Insights who actually facilitates them. But there are tools. You can actually assess the role that you need to fill. It's a very powerful tool. So you actually look and say, okay, what kind of person do I need on my team? And so you assess the role. And then when you have candidates, you can have them do a personality assessment. They're very cost effective. I mean, the mini report, I think, starts off at, it's like 6 pages. It starts off at like $12, $13, right? It's nothing, right? And so then you can have the person do the assessment, and then you look at the match to see how matched they are to the role. And I've seen this happen time and time again where people are like, oh yeah, but this person's so great. And, they're my cousin's daughter or whatever, blah, blah. And, and that's awesome. Hey, we want to support them in furthering their career. You want to be able to put them in the position to win. And this may not be the right position for them depending on their skill sets. So if I'm looking for somebody that's naturally, and everybody can be great at sales, everybody can be a great advisor. It's really more about cross-training, if that makes sense. One, just to understand the personality types. Even if you're a reserved person and you understand who you're talking to, you can tailor your communication to the person you're talking to, and without losing yourself in the process. And so anybody can be a successful advisor. Anybody can do certain things. But when you are the best at what what you're doing is when you are playing to your strengths. So the C personality type is very organized. If I was looking for an assistant, I would look for someone who, and depending on, I'm talking about an assistant who's going to do just strictly the back end work, then I'm going to look for somebody who's more analytical, somebody that's very organized, somebody that's got enough personability, they're personable so that so if clients call, they're friendly. So they've got to have that blend, maybe, a CS personality type or a CIS, but they've got that organization that complements if they have the social skills, right? Now, could be a D. I actually have a client of mine in Canada. He has an assistant of his. He's a financial advisor, very successful, and he's got an assistant who is a D personality type, which blends well with him because he doesn't have as much of the D. He's a bit of a softie, very successful, but he's a bit of a softie when it comes to certain things. So she's on him. She's getting things done, and she's making sure that she's got his back with certain things. And at one point he actually said, I have this client I've been able to get rid of. She just was new. I've done this, the small client. We haven't been able to, release him. We wanted to, move him out of the bottom tier, and because he was working with higher end clients. And she said, "Oh, no problem." And the guy had called, and that's why they came up in conversation. And he's like, "Oh, no problem." So she's like, "Give me 5 minutes." And so she gets on the phone with him. I don't know what she said, but he was happy, and he was ready to move on and to work with another advisor that would suit his needs a little bit better. But she was able to do that, and so. Again, for an assistant, I would look for somebody that's probably more on the reserve type. If they're too social, then all they're going to do is chat it up, and they're not going to get stuff done. If they're too direct and they don't understand personalities, they could be too abrasive. If I'm looking for an advisor, if I'm looking for a salesperson, you got to be comfortable with talking to people. So that I personality type, a lot of salespeople are naturally natural salespeople, so to speak, or those ID personality types or DI personality types. Does that make sense?
It does make sense for sure. One of the assessments that we use in our consulting practice with advisors is the Colby-A.
Yes.
And that is nowhere near as popular as the Myers-Briggs. Could you contrast DiSC versus MBTI and just share your thoughts on which is more effective?
Great question. So to clarify, Colby, which I'm certified actually in Colby, I did it a number of years ago. Colby and DiSC are slightly different. So Kathy Colby, or David Colby, I guess her father, who started, that is really measuring the action mode, right? So it doesn't actually overlay exactly onto DiSC. Okay, so she talks about the three parts of the mind. There's the cognitive, there's the affective, and the conative. And the conative is where Kolbe sits. And they're not as well known, but it's a fantastic tool. I often will use this, both of them together, the DiSC and the Kolbe together. So the affective, which is behavioral preferences, is where the DiSC falls in, Myers-Briggs and all of that. When you think of cognitive, that's the IQ. So it's really about how I think, how I feel, and how I will do it. And so that's the distinction there between some of the assessments. Now, in terms of DiSC versus Myers-Briggs, Myers-Briggs is a great tool. The problem is that every time I've gone into work with a company and I mention using DiSC, and they say, "Oh, well, you've done Myers-Briggs," and I say, "That's fantastic." So, of the people that haven't been certified as a trainer in Myers-Briggs, how many of your people use Myers-Briggs on a day-to-day basis with their in their interactions with their coworkers, with their and with their clients and their prospects? And so far, the answer has been, as far as they know, none. And to me, that's like, well, so okay, so people understand themselves. They read a report and they go, "Oh, wow, that's really interesting," and then they put it in their drawer or whatever, they save it on their computer, and that's the end of that. And then they go, "Oh, I think I'm like an INTJ or something." To me, the power is in the application. And so DiSC is something that you can apply very easily. When I meet somebody, I can't ask them to do an assessment so that I understand how to talk to them, right? So that's where DiSC can be very quickly applied in any situation. And you can see people's DiSC personality type driving down the road. You know, it's funny, it's the way they drive. They're going to be in the left lane, get out of their way. They're on a mission, and you're slowing them down if you're sitting in front of them. You know, if you're the I personality type, they're looking at everybody else. "Oh, look at that over there." You know, my brother, he's like, "Oh, look at that Corvette over there." I'm like, "Watch the car in front of you that you're about to run into." So, and then the S personality type, they're like, "Oh no, you go first." Like they're letting people merge in front of them. They're like very kind. Of course, I'm giving you the extremes of all the personality types. Everybody's a blend, but it's fun to break them down to understand the natural tendencies of each of the personality types. And then the C, of course, they're going, "I can't believe they're doing that. They shouldn't be driving like that. They shouldn't be doing this," because there's a right way and there's a wrong way to do things. So again, it comes back to application. So that's the difference between the tools. Myers-Briggs is very clinical. I actually have on my website under my blog, there is actually a blog that I did, which was actually about specifically what is the difference between the DiSC and the Myers-Briggs, and it goes into much more depth in terms of the clinical studies and so forth, if somebody really wants to break that down further.
All right, let's circle back to the Kolbe and the DiSC. How can you use those two assessments to better identify talent? Because I'm familiar with the Kolbe. I'm not familiar with DiSC. Could you, in very basic terms, explain how those two work together?
Great question. So we talked a little bit already about the DiSC. So I identify talent as a natural strength of the deep personality type is to get stuff done. Because their motivating factor is results, they're very good at getting things done. They're very good at driving things forward, right? The I personality type, and these are, so if you think of dominant, you think of they're dominant, they're a driver, they're a doer, they're decisive, they make quick decisions, they make things happen, right? Then you got the I personality type. They're fun. They make sure everybody has fun. They get to know people. They build rapport and connection very well with people. There's certain strengths. They're good talkers, right? They just have the gift of the gab. Now they got to rein that in. Any strength taken to an extreme becomes a weakness. So they got to make sure, as with all the personality types, you got to make sure that you're playing to your strengths and not letting them get to the extreme of a weakness. But so all the personality types have they have these strengths that are naturally inherent to them. And when you understand somebody's personality type, then you can start to realize what their strengths are. The supportive type, well, they're really great at harmony. They're really great at building teamwork and making sure everybody's included. Nobody's being left behind. They're being listened to and appreciated. And then and they get things done. I mean, because they're supportive, they're going to help people like a D personality type who loves to delegate. The S personality type is somebody that loves to help out and make sure, things get done from that standpoint. And then the C personality type, their process and procedure, they make sure things are organized and getting done well. So understanding that, you understand, wow, okay, so, we can play to their strengths, which I'm a big believer in, playing to their strengths. The Edge, Discover the Edge, which is my company. The Edge is really when you're playing your sweet spot, when you're doing what you love, what you're great at, and what you can make money at, of course, as well, when we're talking about building businesses or putting people in a career that they're going to do well at. Now, Colby, where Colby comes in is Colby determines the action mode. It's the how you're actually going to get it done. So you may be a driver or decisive, that dominant personality type where you're a driver, but how do you solve problems? Some people solve problems by going into, the fact finder mode. Some people go into organizing, what they call the follow through mode, which is organizing and sorting. Some people are just the quick start. So in Colby, they have 4. So there's fact finder, follow through, quick start, and implementer. Could be the quick start where your ideation, you're just, coming up with all these ideas and envisioning the big, bold vision that you're going to go after. An implementer, which is tactile. Some people, when they have a problem to solve, they start going into building a model, even sometimes physically. Have you ever seen somebody at a table where they start, moving stuff around and trying to describe something to you using actual things like the salt shaker, and they're moving stuff around to trying to show you? That's a tactile type of thing. A lot of those people are very hands-on and build things with their hands. And so that will tell you how somebody's actually going to get it done. Now, as a team, obviously, you've got to have different, depending on your team and what you're looking to accomplish, you're going to want to have different combinations based on that. You're not going to want somebody who is a quick start, who's more the imagination and envisioning person, and you don't want to bury them in research to do in fact-finding details, because it'll wear them out, and they only have a certain amount of energy that they could put. They could probably put a little bit of energy to it, but after a while, it's going to create stress on them and friction because they're not playing to their strengths. They're actually accommodating another skill set. And after a while, that's not going to work out, and they will not have the ability to be a 10, what I call a quote unquote a 10 at it, because it's not in their natural strengths. So they can operate there for a little while, but the idea is build a unique team of people that are playing to their strengths, a strengths-based team, and that they're playing to their unique ability, the thing that they can be a 10 at. You want to build a great team, make sure everybody on your team is doing what they do best.
Great. Nicole, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. Just
my pleasure.
Incredible information, especially being able to contrast DiSC, Colby, and Myers-Briggs and how they could work together. So how could listeners find out more information about what you do?
Sure. Well, they can go to discovertheedge.com. That's my website. On there, if they're interested in the behavior assessments, which Colby is also listed there, so it's not just personality, but behavior assessments, there's a drop down on the menu, and you can find it there. And we list out all the different types of assessments. There's even one for teens that is geared to them. There's even one for your kids. So 4 years old and up, you can have them do a personality assessment. Imagine if your kid actually understood how to deal with the teacher. I think we would probably have a lot less kids diagnosed with ADD and so forth, because they'd understand how to operate within that system and be successful. So there's lots of assessments. And of course, there's leadership tools, also, as I said, job assessment, all those kind of cool tools are there.
Excellent. I'll have links to all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on, Nicole.
My pleasure, Jay. Thanks for having me.